Welcome to First and Goal, everybody. This is Week 5's edition of First and Goal. You saw Week 2, Week 3, and Week 4 with myself at Adam Pfeifer. Of course, this is presented by Rosters.com, so be sure, if you haven't signed up yet, to head over to Rosters.com, use promo code CURVE, and you get an additional or instant, actually, $20 on your initial $10 deposit. So that's an excellent deal. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, please go over there and be sure to do so. Of course, you know me. You know Josh Collacchi. You know Adam Pfeifer. We have a very special guest here today. I'm very happy to bring him on because Adam and I have known him in the industry for a little while. He does excellent work at 4for4 Football. So let's bring him in. TJ Hernandez, how you doing, man? Nice to see you.
What's up, boys? Thanks for having me. We got a little old school reunion here. We've all been together for quite a while since our early days in the industry, so I'm stoked to be on.
Yeah, back when I was like 7.
Yeah.
When Adam was 7, 3 years ago.
6 years ago when I was 7. For anybody who doesn't know TJ, he's like essentially my bully, my older brother / bully of the industry,
and life coach.
Yeah, and life coach, and yoga instructor as well.
So does that all happen at the same time, or
no? Usually it's just me and TJ going back and forth, him making fun of me because I'm 12 years old, and me calling him egghead because I literally have no other comebacks.
All right, well, it looks like a brotherhood definitely is going to be developing there. I can already see it. All right, now what we do each week here, as you have for those of you who turned in before, Adam and I like to discuss our thoughts on the previous week, and of course we go into each game and give our first thoughts. So there's going to be 3 of us this week, so you're going to hear a lot of different opinions, so I'm really happy to dive right into it. Fellas, let's first just talk about Week 4. A lot of things happened that maybe we could predict, like Julio Jones having 9,000 yards and 46 touchdowns. The only thing I think that was fully predictable, tight end 1 and 2, Jordan Reed and Greg Olsen. So, guys, let's start with you, Adam. What did you notice in Week 4? What kind of stuck out to you?
Among the tight ends?
Among everything, really.
Oh, among everything? Well, Crabtree's the GOAT.
All 9 touchdowns. I was there for that live, so that was fun.
Yeah. No, but, like, the big thing to me was how annoying the Lions offense could be this year, because like they're so tilting to watch because they get in scoring territory and then they shoot themselves in the foot because Stafford throws a pick or they take a penalty, but they're kind of a little bit worrisome, not a whole lot, but they're a little one-dimensional right now for sure, so that's a little bit concerning. Other things that really stuck out to me, Ben Roethlisberger at home is money. I was really on Ben this week. I didn't see that coming. But, like, the home road splits, we talk about home road splits with Drew Brees as much as anybody, but Ben Roethlisberger is a guy we got to look at in that regard too. He's awesome at home, and we saw it 2 weeks ago. He's not as awesome on the road. And we'll talk about this later when we get into the games, but keep an eye on guys who are just torching certain corners. We'll talk about that, but Michael Crabtree had that 3-touchdown game against a certain Baltimore corner, so if you see a trend of corners getting roasted and other good wide receivers are up next on the schedule, definitely want to look at that because a lot of people who do as much digging and work in the industry as we do, we'll look into that, but the average player will see the matchup and that's it. They won't really look at who's lining up where, who's lining up against who. So other than that, Cam was tilting and Jimmy Graham looks back, so it's good to see.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham is definitely something to keep an eye on. I tweeted about him this morning from the Rotocurve account where he had a target rate of just one of the highest he's seen in a while. He played a lot of snaps already. So I think he's starting to work his way back into that Seattle offense, and it's taken him about 2 years, but maybe he'll be a target coming forward for us to look at. TJ, what did you notice in Week 4? Anything that stuck out?
Yeah, I mean, I think how bad that Panthers secondary is right now. Like, we kind of knew they were going to have a drop-off without Norman, but kind of that team as a whole, them and Arizona are both teams that I spoke about a lot in the preseason about teams that we should expect to regress, at least on the offensive side of the ball, because they were scoring at such ridiculous rates. Not even that they weren't efficient. Actually, the Panthers weren't that efficient moving the ball, but I mean, obviously we didn't think it would be this extreme. Panthers still put up 33 points, but it was a lot of late game kind of garbage time scoring. And then Cardinals, obviously, without Palmer, it's, for almost half of the game. Take that with a grain of salt. I mean, call that just regression with with if they're going to be stuck with the backup quarterback. But still, those two teams I think you really have to take note of. And I think a lot of times early in the season we want to say we want to wait and see, but we're already a quarter of the way through the season. So I think we have to work with the information we have, and this might be what we expect from these teams. A couple things that surprised me, maybe not surprised me, but more confirmed how bad the Colts are just as a team. Both of their lines really struggle, and that defense is really bad. I was surprised that the Chiefs didn't keep pace with the Steelers. I kind of pinpointed them as a sleeper offense, but that was just a situation where that get behind. I think you'll see a lot of that from that team. I think if somehow they would have kept it close, that idea that they were going to have a good day against the Steelers might have came into fruition a little bit. But yeah, that team can't play from behind. I don't think anyone expect them to, but I was surprised at how bad they were.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chiefs coming from behind. I watched that game, and even when they were down 4 or 5 scores, Alex Smith was still dumping the ball off to his running back.
They ran like 9 screens in like 11 plays. Like
one drive,
I mean, they're trying to pick up yards. And
imagine if they kept that close. Like Antonio Brown would have went nuclear. He would have went nuts.
Yeah. That brings me to the thing that I saw the most when I looked at this last week. I watched a lot of games. Obviously, I was at the game where Michael Crabtree scored 3 touchdowns in Baltimore, but I was glad to be able to get home in time to watch that Steelers offense. I mean, Le'Veon Bell lining up out wide in the slot, seeing him and D'Angelo Williams on the field at the same time was something special. And I'm not sure how they're going to be stopped looking forward. There's just too much talent. Sammy Coates is coming into his own, although he may drop a pass or two. He's a deep threat. We all know about Antonio Brown's ability. They have D'Angelo Williams, who's an excellent back when he gets his carries. Obviously, his snaps will be very well limited now with Le'Veon Bell back. But talk about that guy coming back. I'm just not sure how anybody is going to be able to stop that offense. And honestly, it's just DFS gold right now.
Yeah, I mean,
he looks so good.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's like the greatest fantasy football coach in history. He just uses his best players. I mean, you talk about DFS gold, like Le'Veon. For me, Le'Veon was a shoe-in cash gameplay last week. I was surprised to hear some people saying that they might be a little worried about time with D'Angelo. Like we have enough of a sample size to know that if Le'Veon's healthy, he's going to get the majority of the work. That's just what the Steelers do. They're going to give their number one back, no matter who it is, 85-90% of the snaps and the touches. That was the cheapest price you were going to get him all year, and that's just a good investment strategy to get probably the best player at his position at the cheapest you'll get him all season. So I was excited to finally get some Le'Veon in my life.
Yeah, I was definitely on that. That's exactly what I said. Like you're not going to see him what was he 7,500 last week on DraftKings, I think. Like you weren't going to see him like that again. And like Tomlin told us that Le'Veon was going to be full go like months ago, like before the season even started. So I don't know why people were worried. But now you're going to be looking at Le'Veon as a guy that's going to be, in the well. Actually, right now he's still 7,500 on DraftKings.
He's back at 75, but he is the most expensive running back. I think last week DJ was more expensive, but he's going to be at the top every week, and he'll probably be over 8K really soon. Yeah,
probably after this week, honestly. Like he looked really good. It was good to watch him back. And the only what TJ was talking about with Tomlin and how he just gives his guys the ball, he also doesn't really pull guys. Like he didn't pull his guys till really late in that game with like 3 minutes left. Like Le'Veon got a carry in that game with like 2 minutes left in the game. I didn't like that, but if you're in a DFS perspective, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, exactly. And when you were talking about that Steelers team, like TJ said, Tomlin plays his guys. Antonio Brown is one of only 2 players at the skill position to play over 95% of snaps so far this season, and he's at 99%. The Steelers have been a part of 3 or 4 lopsided games already, especially with the Eagles game and the blowout of the Chiefs the other night. So with this team, regardless of the score, you're going to get some volume. You're going to get a lot of it, and it kind of helps a little bit. They're a little bit talented, I guess you would say, right? Bell's pretty good. Brown's pretty good. They're not bad players.
Yeah, and people always forget, like, if you're even thinking about like a decision between Brown and whatever top receiver, like if it's a coin flip, people forget that you get that double dip because he returns punts. Like that's another great thing. Like they got their best player on their team returning punts, and every once in a while you'll hear an announcer say something like, "Oh, aren't you afraid of getting him hurt?" Like that's the dumbest logic of all time. It's like telling a running quarterback not to run. Like use your best players in every way possible and let them do good things for you. I'm a closet Steelers fan, man.
It's one of those things, like you said, Seattle uses their best players on special teams. So
Yeah.
you only get 53 guys. You only get 49 guys to suit up most times on Sunday. So use your best guys. You only have 11 on each side starting. So if you're going to get your best players as your gunners, like Richard Sherman's been a gunner for the Seahawks for a while, why not? Give them the best chance to score, and that's exactly what happens with AB. So like you said, you're going to get that double dip. Every once in a while he's going to run a kickback. That's a free 6 points in DFS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
Now, let's real quick. The only thing I wanted to touch on before we moved on, the leaders in rushing right now through week 4. LeGarrette Blount, Isaiah Crowell, and the leader right now is Ezekiel Elliott, just like we all predicted, right? All 3 of those guys.
Yeah, I had Isaiah Crowell as my RB1 heading into the year. So, what you guys talking about?
I mean, Zeke, people were taking Zeke as a first-round pick in redraft because we expected the Cowboys, to give him this kind of workload. So he wasn't getting the touchdowns the first couple of weeks, but, I don't think that's a huge surprise. Like Garrett Blount without Tom Brady, you could kind of shoehorn a narrative as to why that could be. Isaiah Crowell, actually, every week when I'm going through my picks or matchups or whatever, I kind of make some notes that have nothing to do with price, nothing to do with stats, just like what's this matchup versus this matchup. And the one that stood out to me, I don't even remember who they were playing week 1, was play Isaiah Crowell just because of the matchup. And I ended up ignoring it, but Hugh Jackson's the most run-heavy coordinator, play caller in the league. So I don't think we could have expected it, but if you go back and do some digging, Hugh wants to run the ball, so we're seeing it happen.
Yeah, it's a great point, like you said. Is when you mentioned those 3 names in a nutshell, you're like, you know what? I don't think anybody would have said that. But like you said, when you go back and look at it, there's always a reason for most things, despite the small sample size. So with that being said, let's move on to this week. Let's move on to week 5. We have 4 teams on bye this week, so it'll be a little bit limited, especially with the one Thursday night game and the Monday night game, with most sites using their big slates for Sunday only. So let's just go real quick on that Thursday night game for those playing in big slates and, of course, those playing in seasonal leagues. Arizona at San Francisco. Adam, we'll start with you. You see anything there?
Not really. And Arizona, I believe, signed a quarterback, so that's telling me that Palmer's probably not going to play. Bruce Arians said he has a chance to be cleared in time for the game, but I don't know. I don't see how he plays, and it's kind of annoying because John Brown was starting to come around here the last 2 games, but if Stan's under center, it kind of takes away from all that. I'd like David Johnson, in general always because he's so good, and I talk about it all the time with David Johnson. He gives you a floor because over his last, I think it's 8 full starts now, he has 100 scrimmage yards in all of them. So. But with Stanton, your scoring opportunities, you go down. I know Palmer hasn't been great this year, but I don't know. I don't see a lot in this game. I know the Niners are bad against the run, and they got torched by Zeke Elliott last week at home, but they do have big home road splits in terms of rushing yards. Maybe that was just because, and I believe actually from watching it was just Dallas's offensive line just dominating. So I don't really have a lot of interest in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really see too much in this game. Like you said, with Carson Palmer likely not playing, it really takes that passing attack a few notches down. Like you said, though, David Johnson would be a play in what on paper was an excellent matchup going into the season. San Francisco's rush defense has been a tad bit better, but it's still not a matchup you should shy away from. TJ, what do you think?
Yeah, if you're playing in a redraft league or something, you're never going to sit David Johnson. If I'm playing DFS Thursdays, I'm usually playing Thursday to fade anyway. So I think this is a pretty good spot to do that. Just getting some GPPs, let those 20, 30 lineups load up on the Thursday night plays like happens every week, and that's free theoretical money in your pocket. So I don't think there's anybody that you have to play if you're playing a Thursday guy. It's usually because it's just a fantastic matchup. I know a lot of really sharp people that played Thursday last week only played AJ Green. That worked out really well. I don't think David Johnson's in such a great spot that he's a must play. So probably just going to throw some dummy lineups in Thursdays just to fade the game.
It's an excellent point you made there about playing in those Thursday to Monday GPPs. For those of you that are newer to DFS, What he's talking about with free money is this. Every Thursday night, we'll use this weekend as an example, you're going to see a lineup where a guy has Drew Stanton, Torrey Smith, Larry Fitzgerald. He's going to have the Niners defense, maybe a guy like Darren Fells. Just for some reason, they feel like that game's going to be 60-60, or maybe there's just somebody who wants to see the green on their leaderboard when they're looking at their current winnings. But for some reason, there is still a handful of people to do that. So like TJ say, it's theoretical free money, and it works you closer to rake free with those lineups just kind of throwing money away.
Yeah, it's such a good spot. I mean, some people might not care if they're in, I don't know, whatever the big tournament is on Thursday and there's 50,000 entries in it or whatever. But I mean, just think about it on the small level. If you're playing in a 10-man field and one of those just has a dummy lineup that has no chance of winning, you're only playing 9 other lineups in a field that's sized at 10. So extrapolate that to a big number, and although that percentage is smaller, it's still that's just a extreme example of what you're getting and how that free money's showing up.
Exactly. Now, I think that's enough for the Thursday night game. Like we said, there's not too much going on there. Let's move to Sunday, this first game. Houston at the Minnesota Vikings, currently the lowest over-under, below 40 points, 39.5, one of the lowest over-unders we've seen this year. If you saw the Vikings defense last night, you know that number still might be too high. So, Adam, we'll start with you. Anything from this game, or is this a fade as well?
Probably the only guy I'm really somewhat interested in would be, just because nobody's really going to be on him, and I kind of like what I've seen from Kyle Rudolph this year. With Sam Bradford under center, we've seen him. They have a really good connection right now. Rudolph's targets so far this season have been pretty consistent, and for a tight end, they've actually been relatively high. 8, 8, 10, and 7 targets in 4 games. He's scored in 3 straight. I talked about it last week. We didn't really talk about the Monday night game much, but over 30% of Sam Bradford's career touchdowns have gone to the tight end position. So I don't mind Kyle Rudolph because, even in an offense that's not, going to be in scoring opportunities as often as a Green Bay or a New England with Brady back, like he could score 2 touchdowns because they already have a small, in terms of pie for their market share. It's pretty much Diggs or Rudolph. I know Cordell Patterson was really involved last night, but when they get in the red zone, it's pretty much like, what do you think the percentage is that it's either Asiata plunging it in from 1 yard or a Kyle Rudolph touchdown? So I don't mind Rudolph and maybe McKinnon, but other than that, this game's kind of gross. I know Rich Rebar tweeted like an hour ago or so that this game is like fantasy darkness or something like that. So I'm kind of with him. It's not a lot about this game that I like. And it's like you don't want to target anybody against Minnesota. Like they are just shutting down every passing offense they faced. And now you have DeAndre Hopkins, whose market share is way down from last season, and Brock Osweiler, who's really bad, like if you watch him. So like he could turn the ball over a lot. So maybe I like the Vikings defense actually.
Yeah, looking at that game, the only thing that I saw maybe in the beginning of the season would have been Hopkins, as everybody likes to talk about him as a lower-owned player because of all the people on Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones. But Xavier Rhodes has been excellent the last 2 weeks since he's come back from his injury. Of course, Kelvin Benjamin called no catches, no targets. Last night we saw Odell Beckham, which is 3 catches on 7 targets for under 30 yards. So Xavier Rhodes playing very well. The rest of that Minnesota Vikings defense is playing very well. TJ, did you want to touch on anything in this game, anything that you see, and maybe a guy you want to play?
Jerick McKinnon's $4,000 on DraftKings this week. He saw 18 touches last night, and he scored a touchdown. If you adjust for strength of schedule, Houston's middle of the pack first running back, so it's not a bad matchup. I mean, the scoring will probably be low, but if you're playing GPPs, he's probably not a cash play, but punting running back is a good idea if you have the chance to and get that touch volume at a discount. So I think he's worth at least taking a look at where I don't see any other glaring values at the running back position. So they're him for sure.
Yeah, and Houston's bottom 5 in rushing yards and rushing yards per attempt this season. So and now with Watt, like even with Watt there, they were kind of getting gashed a little bit. So I don't mind McKinnon at all. I didn't realize he was that cheap still. So obviously you have to worry about him not getting the touchdowns, but like you got to think sooner or later, like they're just going to go full in with McKinnon, I would hope.
Yeah, but the thing about DraftKings is, especially at the running back, you can really make up the volume without touchdowns. You could
Yeah.
win you can win a GPP on DraftKings without having a 2 touchdown guy. We saw McKinnon score last night, and if he catches 5 or 6 balls, I mean that's a touchdown and points on DraftKings. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I actually may or may not have Jerick McKinnon as a sleeper in our consensus rankings. So just a little bit of a teaser there for those of you that use Roto-Curve consensus rankings there. Let's move on to this next game, Tennessee at Miami. At first glance, you look at this and you're like, I don't know if I want to play either one of these teams. Sometimes the quarterbacks struggle, sometimes they don't. But the way I look at this game, I think Tannehill can be used a little bit based on his lower price, and I still love Jarvis Landry most weeks, especially this week against his secondary that tends to struggle. So, TJ, we'll start with you for this game. Tennessee at Miami. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, the thing that stands out to me immediately is just how bad Tennessee's offense has been outside of DeMarco Murray. So I really like playing a defense against them at this point. I mean, the problem with DeMarco this week, even though it's a decent matchup, is he's priced really high. I think he's only $300 below Le'Veon on DraftKings. So that's a little too pricey for me. Jarvis Landry, people love to hate him or hate to love him because he's boring, but he's going to get his 13 to 15 targets, and he's usually going to pay off PPR cash value. So he's always a consideration, and I think this is a pretty good spot for him.
Adam, what about you? What are you looking at for this game?
Yeah, like it's a great spot for DeMarco Murray because like he's been arguably the top fantasy running back this season. He's averaging 21 touches, 124 total yards, scoring over a touchdown per game. The thing that's been great about him, like people were kind of worried about if he was done or not after the season of Philly, but they obviously misused him, right? I mean, they were out of the shotgun a lot. He had 156 attempts out of the shotgun last year. He only has 4 so far this season. So, like, they're using him correctly. It's a good spot. Teams are running the ball 47% of the time against Miami, which is the 3rd highest clip in the NFL. So I'd like DeMarco Murray, but like if I can pay $300 more even against the Jets, I think Le'Veon has more upside and might even have a higher floor because he's lining up in the slot and stuff so much. Like I think 5 receptions, and we'll talk about this later, is probably a floor for Le'Veon. Or it could be for DeMarco because he's starting to catch the ball a lot too. So I don't mind DeMarco. Yeah, I'm with TJ. I kind of like Landry here because Tennessee is a defense that you want to attack through the air. And they've given up 3 100-yard games this season. I know it's not really Landry's game, but he leads the NFL in targets, I believe, or he's up there. So, I don't mind Jarvis Landry, obviously, on DraftKings. He's 2nd in the NFL in receptions, and he has double-digit targets in every game, so I don't mind him. Like, Mariota was my guy all offseason, but he's been playing so bad. Like, he turns the ball over a ton. So, yeah, I think defenses against Tennessee could be interesting. What does Mariota have? 5 interceptions. He's fumbled 3 times this season. So, yeah, even at 5,400, I'd probably, if I had to pick a quarterback in this game, pick Tannehill because Miami can't run the football, and Tennessee's decent against the run. So, like, this could be a game where Tannehill throws the ball 40 times, and we've seen him at fantasy upside because of his rushing ability, the pace that Adam Gase plays in. Here's a really sneaky guy that nobody's going to be on, and probably because it's a terrible play. Rashard Matthews, bench, anyone?
Bench game. I mean,
I
don't know.
He was healthy for like 8 games last year, so he was barely a Dolphin. So I don't know what he needs revenge for.
Like, no, I was more
like
joking about the revenge, but like he's 3,300. I wish his snaps were higher because I like targeting receivers against Miami. Like their corners are really bad. But yeah, like there's probably better options.
As TJ was saying, that game, when you're looking at DeMarco Murray, he is 7,200 on DraftKings, which is $300 less than Le'Veon Bell. A lot of people will look at that and say, you know what? Maybe Murray is a good contrarian play. But if you think about it, what are the chances Le'Veon Bell's going to have a poor game? At this point, it's very slim. I know the Jets have a pretty good defense, but you know how I talk about defenses with a good rush, especially with pass catching backs, can really turn into a big PPR day. So when you're looking between those two guys at that price, for me at least, every time I'm going with the guy at Le'Veon Bell. Now, if you wanted to play both of them, I could see an argument for that. But then again, you're using two backs on a PPR format at 14,700. So I'm not exactly sure I would advise that unless you want to be completely contrarian and pay down at wide receiver.
Yeah, and you're not using any of the Miami backs, so.
Exactly. So let's move on to this next game. Now, I hate to bring up any narratives at all ever. You guys know how I talk about things. But New England and Cleveland, it's just you don't even have to use a narrative. Tom Brady's going to throw for 9,000 touchdowns, 12 million yards. Gronk might catch 5 of them. This is one of those games where every single time I click on create lineup on any site, it always starts with Tom Brady. And I don't know what's going on there.
So, how chalky do you think Brady's going to be?
I think he's going to be 700% owned this week in cash games.
Some crazy numbers you just threw around.
So the only thing, though, 7,500, kind of high. So maybe it's a different way to go. TJ, what are your thoughts on this game? Because I know we want to touch on a lot of things here.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots have the highest projected team total of the week at 28.5. I think it's just going to be all Brady all day against Cleveland. We saw Kirk Cousins do it to this defense last week. We saw Ryan Tannehill do it 2 weeks before that. Cleveland's a team that you want to attack through the air, and I think Patriots are going to do that this week. I mean, LeGarrette Blount's been fantastic, but I'll take a ride down narrative street this week and say that I'm going to have a lot of Brady. I mean, yeah, 7,500 is kind of expensive, but in cash games, his ownership percentage will probably be higher than Cam Newton's career completion percentage. So,
so like the floor for quarterbacks against Cleveland is like stupid high right now. Opposing quarterbacks are averaging 270 yards, 2.5 touchdowns per game, 23 fantasy points per game. And going back to last season, 18 of the last 20 quarterbacks they've faced have thrown at least 2 touchdowns. So like with that given, I mean, you saw Tannehill and these other, Wentz's first career start, he went for 278 and 2. Like especially coming off a loss, I think Belichick's just gonna be like, "Yo, Tom, welcome back. Do whatever you want." Brady's probably, and especially because it's interesting to see what their offense looks like because they were the most run-heavy team in the NFL the first 4 weeks with Brady out. So I think Brady is such a lock. I know I said that about Cam last week, which is funny, but I don't see how Brady doesn't get 20 DraftKings points in this spot at least. So I guess the real question is, what do we do with the other New England guys? Because you have Gronk, who barely played any snaps on Thursday night, but then last week against the Bills, he played 41 snaps, but he only ran pass routes on 13 of them, catching 1 pass. Didn't really look 100%. I think people are probably still going to play Gronk because Brady's back. So what do you guys think about Gronk and Edelman and, maybe Blount or somebody? That's the real question, I think, of this game.
TJ, I'll take a thought on that. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you say.
Yeah, if I'm taking a Tom Brady pass catcher, I think it's going to be Edelman. We've seen them pretty much dominate when they're together. He's going to I almost guarantee he'll end up leading the Patriots in targets. I mean, him and Gronk are going to be competing for a lot of those interior targets, even though Amendola has seen quite a few of them. But I just don't think you need to be paying up for tight end in this spot for a guy that we really haven't seen be super active yet. I mean, yeah, he's fantastic, but if he's only at 65 or 3/4 strength, I don't think you need to waste all that salary on a guy where tight end is pretty deep.
Yeah, and I love Edelman because slot receivers have killed the Browns this year. You saw Jordan Matthews go for 100 and touchdown in week 1. You saw Jarvis Landry go for 100 and touchdown against them. I know Jamison Crowder was in a great spot. I loved him last week. He didn't do much. But Jordan Reed kind of counts as that too. I mean, he plays in the slot a lot and lines up as a receiver. So I think Scott Barrett of Pro Football Focus had a chart that shows the Browns are allowing over 20 fantasy points per game just to the slot. So they really struggle in that spot. So I think Edelman can have one of those 11 catch, 99, 2 touchdown games or whatever, because he seems to always get 11 for 90 something and never 100. But yeah, I'm on the Brady Edelman stack. I think it's going to be pretty popular, but I don't see how it faults any Browns guys though. Isaiah Crowell's been good despite Cleveland having, a relatively high trail rate this season, but like we got to what's the spread here? 10?
10.5.
10.5, yeah. That's tough. I mean, people are going to play Pryor, I guess, right?
I mean, he's not even cheap
look
anymore.
at him, but
yeah, he's 5,800. I mean, I don't know what other receivers are in that price range, but an extra $1,000 compared to his salary last week.
5,800 against a coach that is notoriously known for shutting down the team's only and best weapons, or you have Sterling Shepard for 5,500 against Green Bay in a game where they'll have to throw. Steve Smith Sr. at 53 and Mike Wallace at 51. Golden Tate's at 4,900. That's funny. A little bit above him is Will Fuller's the same price. Sean Jackson is in a great spot, which I'll talk about later, is 5,900. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to have any Pryor.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm actually very elated to hear both of you guys on Edelman. He's my guy this week. Absolutely. He's going to be very chalky. But the one thing about him is a lot of people seem to go off of players that don't necessarily have an excellent week the night before or the week before. And his price jumped up 900 in DraftKings. For me, either way, it doesn't matter. As TJ said, he's going to be fighting for a lot of those interior routes. I want a piece of that regardless of the spread here. You know that Tom Brady's going to be throwing the ball at least 30 times. With a lot of those targets going to the middle of the field, you know Edelman's going to be the guy there. So for me, he's definitely going to be a lock in cash games. And like Adam said, with Pryor, he's very expensive considering the fact that the opportunity cost you'd be using kind of going to hurt you a little bit. I think Steve Smith's another option, 5,300. I know he's as old as dirt, but he has been productive. He scored a touchdown last week. 5,300, he's cheaper than Pryor. He has an excellent matchup against Washington as he lines up all over the field. He's not going to be shadowed by anyone. So I just think a guy like Pryor, as Adam said, Belichick's going to be focusing on stopping him because what is he going to be worried about? Cody Kessler? No. Isaiah Crowell's a running back, so they'll stop the running game. But I just think that they're not going to let Pryor beat him. And all day long, like you guys are saying, we agree here. Brady to Gronk, Brady to Edelman, Brady to Hogan, Brady to whoever. It's just going to be a lot of Tom Brady this week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this next game. And when I circled this game in the calendar, when I looked at the schedule as soon as it came out a few months back, I'm very interested to see this Pittsburgh offense against this New York Jets defense. Now, for me, in fantasy purposes, we know about Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. On the other side, I was looking at Decker in the beginning, but of course we know he's hurt. So I'm interested to hear your guys' take on this because I think the Steelers can all be used as the Jets secondary isn't as good as it advertised. But TJ, let's start with you. How is this game kind of sitting on your radar right now?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets have kind of turned into one of those funnel defenses that we like to talk about. They're still pretty stout against the run, but they've been really bad against the pass. I haven't looked at the updated numbers this week, but going into last week, they ranked third worst in the league in fantasy points per reception allowed to wide receivers. Obviously, that bodes really well for Antonio Brown, who probably can't ever be priced high enough at this point to he's always a cash game consideration. So I think that on that side of the ball, it's pretty clear what we want to do. As far as the Jets are concerned, I probably would have liked them a little bit more a week ago, just because the Steelers were really bad on the defensive line, the front seven overall, getting pressure on the quarterback. But then last week we saw them start dialing up some blitzes, getting after Alex Smith a little bit. So that did change. I don't know if that was something that they saw a chink in the Chiefs' armor or if they just realized how bad they had been the first 3 weeks of getting after the quarterback and decided to do something after it. But that does have me a little bit concerned, whereas I might have wanted to target Pittsburgh with someone like Brandon Marshall, maybe even Fitzpatrick. Now I'm concerned if they're getting after Fitz. We already know that he's a turnover-prone quarterback, not just because of that 6 interception game. He's always kind of had a high interception rate. So I think Pittsburgh could get after Fitzpatrick a little bit, and I mean, long shot, but Steelers could have a repeat of last week and just really get after this Jets team.
Yeah. For the Steelers, this is like a match made in heaven for Roethlisberger. It's a home game, and if you look at what the Steelers do, they take a lot of deep shots. They're third in the NFL in 20-yard passing plays. The Jets allow the third most 20-yard passing plays. They allow league high 9 yards per pass attempt and just under 13 yards per completion, which is also the third highest. So, it's a really good spot for Roethlisberger in the passing game and what Todd Haley and the Steelers want to do. So I'm fine with Roethlisberger. Ownership's probably going to be relatively high after his 5 touchdown game, but I'm okay with him. Sorry, I have a cough drop. Le'Veon, his price can go up, so I'm going to play him again. I don't care who he's facing. And, like, I think there was, like, 9 straight plays. It was like 6 straight plays in the first quarter on Sunday night where he lined up as a receiver. He played 88% of the snaps, looked as good as ever, so I'm fine with Le'Veon again, especially at that price. Like TJ talked about buying low. It's like one of my favorite things to do in fantasy, so whether it's DFS or seasonal. And then Antonio Brown, yeah, you can play him. I think it's an interesting spot for Jesse James. He's 2,900. He scored last week, and we've seen the Jets get torched by tight ends back-to-back weeks. But that's more of the more athletic tight ends in Kelsey and Jimmy Graham. I know Graham's not what he was in New Orleans, but interesting to see if Jesse James can kind of keep that trend going. And, yeah, for the Jets, you got to pay attention to the running back news because apparently Matt Forte was seen in the being carted to the X-ray room after the game. I don't think there's been an update on that, but I kind of don't think Bilal Powell's too bad at 4,000 on DraftKings. He's kind of taken over the passing game role the last 2 weeks. We've seen 9 and 7 targets the last 2 weeks. We know the Steelers give you the short intermediate game because they're not trying to get beat deep, which is what they've been doing all year, especially if Shazier's out again. So I don't mind Bilal Powell. And then if Decker's out again, Marshall should see 15 targets, so I don't mind him either.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a few stats I saw about this Jets passing defense. Of course, we know about the names they have there. They were supposed to be very good in the secondary, but you guys mentioned how the fact that they have become a funnel defense, and it's definitely true. The Jets have allowed 48 receptions so far this season in wide receivers. Now, that's a low number, but they have almost 800 yards and 66 targets to wide receivers. So wide receivers have been targeted 66 times, only 18 incompletions. Now, adjusting that for schedule, you see they face have it right here. They face the Bengals, A.J. Green. We know about that. But then the Bills, Chiefs, and Seahawks do not exactly have the best of wide receiver core, other than maybe Doug Baldwin. So you see a team like the Jets allow that many receptions per target, basically, when you look at it, 48 receptions on 66 targets, just 18 incompletions there, over 800 yards, only 4 touchdowns, but I think that number could definitely go up. So do not be afraid to use Antonio Brown again. I know it sounds obvious, but I think the secondary receivers for the Steelers make for an interesting stack play with Roethlisberger if you wanted to pair them with a guy who will be lower owned as more of a game theory play.
Yeah, let's see if Sammy Coates can run routes, though. That'd be cool. Good, dude.
I like the Jesse James call a lot. I mean, tight ends really, regardless of how athletic he is against this defense, I mean, tight ends generally rely on those red zone targets, and Pittsburgh will move the ball really well. I think that he's seen his fair share of red zone targets, especially in the first 3 weeks. I think he could be a really good play this week.
Let's move on to this next game here. It's a game that will be very interesting in that area of the country, Washington at Baltimore, 2 fan bases that are not exactly fond of each other, if you've ever been to that area. The Redskins will travel to Baltimore, which is really only about a 40-minute ride. This game, the way I'm looking at it, Justin Forsett was just cut. We saw Terrence West get over 20 carries against the Raiders, but Kenneth Dixon could be back this week. So although Terrence West looked like the feature back, he looked like a bell cow for 1 week, with Kenneth Dixon likely to be active, I still think this is a situation you may want to avoid. Now, with that being said, if Dixon is not able to play and you're going to look at him for a Week 6 return, Terrence West could be an interesting spot against Washington, who's just getting torched. On the other side, we know about those Washington receivers, so I'm going to let Adam touch on that because I know he's a big fan of this passing game this week.
Yeah, I just like targeting Sharice Wright. That's why I was on Crabtree last week, and he roasted him. And I don't have the PFF numbers, but Scott Barrett, who I talk about on the show a lot, he always tweets out these incredible numbers from PFF. So over the last 3 weeks, Sharice Wright, the Ravens' number 2 corner, has allowed 16 catches for 205 yards and 5 touchdowns in coverage. So he has not been playing very well. And Djax actually torched him last year for 119 and a touchdown. So low ownership after a terrible game against Cleveland. People are going to be off of him. He's 5,900, so he's well affordable. And he's in that price range where people might go with other guys. So, yeah, I mean, and Washington ran the ball well against Cleveland last week, but this is a team that generally we expect not to be able to run the ball very well. I don't think they will against Baltimore as a top 10 run defense right now. So I really like Deshaun Jackson. I'm fine with Cousins. He looked better last week. Obviously, everybody does against the Browns, but when they get in close, they're throwing the football. He leads the league in pass attempts from inside the 10-yard line. So Baltimore's allowing 2 passing touchdowns per game this year. I'm fine with Cousins. And then Jordan Reed, it was good to see him back in the mix, especially in the red zone. I think he had like 3 or 4 end zone targets. So if you're paying out for Jordan Reed, or for tight end, I mean, Jordan Reed's obviously probably the top tight end to look at, especially with Greg Olsen playing on Monday night and Gronk being, not 100% and Delaney Walker not being 100%. So, yeah, that's how I look at this game. And with the Baltimore rushing game, like, stinks that we don't have as much clarity because this is such a good spot. I mean, Washington's been getting destroyed against the run. 133 yards per game on the ground. Only 2 teams are allowing 2 rushing touchdowns per game this season. That's the Redskins and the Saints. And Terrence West looked good, and he dominated the touches 21-5 over Buck Allen, but it's not like he played 80 or 70% of the snaps. It was only 44% to 27%. So if Dixon plays, I'm not sure what the snap count is going to be for West, which has me a little bit concerned.
TJ, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, the one guy that stands out to me besides whoever's facing Sharice Wright, which it's just an insane matchup. I mean, I think I really like going back to Jordan Reed because in any other week, I think his ownership percentage would be through the roof, and maybe it still will be, but he and Gronk are priced exactly the same with so many people targeting that New England offense, especially in GPPs. I think that it'll drive Reed's ownership down at least a little bit, and we saw Crowder getting a lot of those red zone looks early in the season. And while I did want to get on that while I can, we finally saw Cousins going back to Reed in the red zone like they did last year. I think that's a sign of things to come. And even if Washington does move the ball really well through the air and Deshaun does end up doing his thing, Deshaun isn't a huge red zone target guy. So if they're moving the ball up and down the field, Jordan Reed could see quite a few red zone targets in this game. And I really like the opportunity to go back to him because I think he and Gronk will somewhat cannibalize each other's ownership percentages.
Yeah, I agree there. It's a good point, especially considering the prices, like you said, very similar to the same on a few sites. The one thing I did want to mention, though, about Reed is on paper, a lot of people may be afraid of that matchup against C.J. Mosley, who was turned into one of the better cover linebackers in the NFL. Now, if you watch the Redskins, Jordan Reed doesn't line up at tight end all the time. Matter of fact, he lines up in the slot quite often. Some packages, they line him out wide if they bring in Niles Paul. So Jordan Reed's going to be moved around a lot, so don't just look at the individual DVP matchup with C.J. Mosley because they're not going to use their Mike linebacker to shadow a guy that moves all the way around the formation. So I'm with you guys. I do think Jordan Reed's an excellent play this week. I'm going to have him as one of my top tight ends, especially in tournaments like TJ just said, because with that ownership going towards Gronk, regardless of his health status, that's a good way to get an excellent piece of a passing offense that should score a lot.
Are you guys on any of the Ravens? I know Steve Smith had a great game, and he's not going to see Norman because he lines up in the slot and out wide. And, Flacco's not, been incredibly strong, but he keeps finding himself in decent spots, and he's averaging 43 pass attempts per game. He's on pace for a career high in pass attempts still. They're throwing about 64% of the time. So, is there anybody on the Ravens you're interested in? I mean, Terrence West is going to be pretty popular if we find out that Dixon's not ready to go, but anybody else?
I do like Steve Smith personally at his price, but that's pretty much the only one I'm looking at. What about you, Teach?
Yeah, Steve Smith's fine. I mean, a lot of his production came on one play last week, but he did see 11 targets. 11 targets in back-to-back games. Anytime you can get a double-digit target guy, even a little bit of a discount, you have to think about him. I do really wish there was some clarification on the running back situation, but I think it'll probably end up being a spot where people will go to West and then end up being really disappointed with the touch and snap share.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
This next game is something that, I'm looking forward to is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Detroit Lions. We're going to get a chance to see this Eagles offense play on turf. They're coming off a bye week. Their defense has been ridiculous. They're ranked in the top in terms of being defensively ranked high against quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, have been insane against tight ends through 3 games this season. So this is going to be an interesting matchup because in the beginning of the season, it was something that a lot of people had circled to use Stafford, but with how well this defense has played, I'm not sure if anybody on the Lions is in play this week. So, TJ, we'll start with you. I'm not sure how to approach this game yet, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
I mean, pretty much what I'm looking at the beginning of every week is which passing offense is facing the Detroit Lions. So, I mean, Carson Wentz has been really good. Jordan Matthews has been his main target. I don't think he'll be a super popular play because I don't know if people realize just how bad Detroit is in their secondary, because the actual fantasy points scored from guys like Hoyer and Mariota have been a little bit modest. Hoyer was good last week, but nothing fantastic. But this Detroit secondary is awful. Everybody, everyone thought Darius Slay is a shadow corner that could really take away some receivers, but he's been mediocre this season. So I really like the passing game of Philadelphia this week.
Yeah. They've allowed 12 passing touchdowns already this year, and there's only been 4 games. So, yeah, I think Zach Ertz is going to be pretty popular. He's 100% healthy, they're saying, and they've allowed the most touchdowns. The Lions have allowed the most touchdowns to tight ends all last year. They've already allowed 6 this year. DeAndre Levy's still not healthy. So I feel like if I get any word that people are going to make Zach Ertz really chalky, which he could be because it's such a great spot. I think Jordan Matthews is really interesting because even if people worry about Darius Slay a little bit, it's not like he's going to be on Darius Slay because Matthews is still playing majority of his snaps out of the slot. So at 6,800 in a game against a terrible pass defense, and a guy that's, even with Ertz back, is still going to see, 8 to 12 targets, I would say, on an offense that lacks receivers. I'm definitely into Jordan Matthews. I'm going back to Marvin Jones this week. I think people are going to be off him, and I kind of like that. The Lions offense is a little bit struggling, and I know the Eagles defense has played well, but if there's one area I want to target the Eagles, it's their number one corner and essentially all their corners. I think Marvin Jones, especially with Golden Tate being benched, and Ebron seems to be hurt after every play. Marvin Jones, people are going to be off him after that last game, plus the matchup. And I still look at this Eagles defense as one that is good, but their secondary is one you can certainly exploit. Opposing wide receiver ones have gone for 80 or a touchdown in 14 of the last 18 games against the Eagles. And a lot of those games they have scored too. So it's not like if they've just gone 7 for 80 and that's it. So Marvin Jones still seeing a really large market share, around 9 targets per game. People are going to be off him. I really like Marvin Jones in tournaments. But I don't know how I feel about Stafford because, he could turn the ball over a lot in this game. They get a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, I want to touch on this real quick. For those of you, as TJ mentioned, if you're playing in those Thursday to Monday GPPs with all those games, Marvin Jones is a very interesting play because of his price, especially on DraftKings. You're looking at Jordy Nelson at 7,900. You see Jarvis Landry and Julian Edelman at 6,700 and 7,000. A lot of people are going to be using those two. In those big slate, you also have Kelvin Benjamin in the matchup. A lot of people are like him at 7,300. And everyone's going to be looking at least one of those top receivers in AB, Julio, Odell Beckham. So when you look at the way that this matches up, Marvin Jones is kind of stuck in the middle there at 7,600. So I would be very surprised if he was over 10% owned, Adam, like you said. And that's a very good way to exploit a low ownership percentage there.
Yeah, I like him a lot in tournaments. And with the Lions running game, Dwayne Washington got hurt. They said they're hopeful he plays, but I think he sprained his ankle and his foot or something like that. So there's no way the Lions are going to be able to run the ball between the tackles. They haven't all year. They're not going to do it against the Eagles front 7. So Riddick leads all running backs in targets right now. He's under 5K. I don't hate Theo Riddick. Just because, Marvin Jones is the only player on the Lions that's seeing more targets than Theo Riddick. So, in a game where Detroit might have to throw a lot, I don't mind Riddick.
Let's move on to this next game here. And you mentioned not being able to run between the tackles. That is the opposite of what we think the Bears are going to do this week against the Indianapolis Colts. Like we just said, Chicago against Indianapolis. This game for me, a lot of Jordan Howard, regardless of his price jumping almost 1,500 to 2,000, regardless of what site you're playing on. I still think, considering the fact that they mentioned he was going to be another bell cow back this week, I think he has a chance to be one of the better backs in terms of fantasy points and at a lower cost. I think he's one of these guys that finds your way easily into a cash lineup, especially given the fact that a lot of people are going to be spending on Brady and Edelman. So you're going to need a little bit of a cheaper back. So for me, this game is going to be a lot of Jordan Howard, maybe some Brian Hoyer against a secondary that has been struggling this year. And as for the other side, maybe luck and GPPs. But at this point, I think I'd rather play Tom Brady at that price. So, Adam, we'll start with you for this game. The Bears at the Colts. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm definitely on Jordan Howard. Even at 5,200, I don't think he's going to get 20 touches. So a 20-touch guy at 5,200, I'm going to take advantage of. He had 26 touches in his debut, his starting debut last week. In week 4, no running back played more snaps than Jordan Howard and DeMarco Murray, both at 63 apiece. And John Fox, whatever narrative, already said they're going to continue to ride him. So against the Colts, yeah, I'm definitely into Jordan Howard. I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see what the quarterback situation is for Chicago. We don't know if Cutler's going to return or not. I mean, there was another report that came out that said Fox said if you're with a guy or whatever and it's working, you're not likely to change. So I don't know. Kevin White's also banged up. So like I don't know. Like Alshon hasn't seen the target share at all that you think he should be seeing. Just been really frustrating. I mean, his season high in targets in the game is 7. Plus he'll probably draw Vontae Davis. So I don't know how I feel about anybody other than Jordan Howard and the Bears. Maybe Zach Miller, but it seems like that rapport has been there with Hoyer, not so much Cutler. So yeah, what do you think about the Colts and the Bears side, TJ? Because like the Colts are so weird because you'd think they'd be in a good spot here, but like their offensive line's been so bad, and it's kind of really hurt their offense, especially without Moncrief.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jordan Howard's just kind of the guy that we still just going to stick into our cash games lineups. Even though his price went up, he's still barely priced in the top 15 at running back. I mean, you guys pretty much covered it all. The problem with Indianapolis is we just don't really know where the ball's going to go. They don't have a dominant red zone guy right now. I mean, we see it going to Doyle when we thought it was going to be Dwayne Allen. T.Y.'s not really a red zone guy. Gore's getting a majority of the running back work, but just isn't really a consistent play. So I don't really know where you can go on this Indy offense right now and else in this game besides Jordan Howard.
Dude, like I liked Gore when he was cheaper, but he's 5,700 now after scoring in 2 straight games. Like I'm usually a Gore guy, but I'm not going to pay 5,700 for Gore when I can get Blunt for 100 cheaper. I can get Howard for 500 cheaper. I can get even in a bad matchup, Devontae Freeman might be the only back there with this Tevin Coleman situation. I can get him for cheaper. So, like, I don't know. Like, nobody's – like, it's so hard because T.Y. Hilton leads the team in targets, and then second is Josh Ferguson. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't really know what to make of – Dwayne Allen hasn't played well. I might honestly just maybe go naked luck and hope he has one of those games. I know he's been bad. Other than that, I don't know who I can get excited about in the Colts right now. The one thing about the Colts that you should like about Luck, though, is I think they are first or second in the amount of time they trail in games so far this season. So that defense isn't doing, the Colts any favors. But for people like us who like when their quarterbacks throw 50 times, I mean, it's decent for Luck, and it's not a terrible spot. So
this next game is really interesting because I know a lot of people were looking at this Falcons offense and just 38 points per game. Matt Ryan has arena league stats right now with 1,500 yards through 4 games, 11 touchdown passes, just 2 picks. And for those of you that look at passer rating, 126.3. That's really incredible. I know it's kind of a flawed stat when you look at things from a DFS perspective, but that number that high is really interesting. Problem is this week, he faces the Denver Broncos, who literally every time I see it, regardless of who the play is on the other side, I just kind of put an X through it. So, TJ, I want to hear your thoughts on this game because I don't think I can necessarily be swayed to use any Falcons this week.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at what Vegas is telling us, they're only projecting Atlanta to score 21 points. They lead the league, I think, at like 38 points per game. Julio's fantastic, and he's going to be really popular coming off that play. But Chris Harris Jr. and Aqib Talib are, like, ridiculous in the secondary. I don't think that the Falcons are going to be able to slow down Von Miller. They're good in the interior with Alex Mack in the run game, but I think they're really going to struggle. I think that if I'm targeting this passing game, it's going to be dependent on if Trevor Siemian is healthy or not, because we saw him break out in week 3. He started on a really good trajectory last week, and then he got hurt. If he ends up playing Atlanta when we adjust for strength of schedule, even just raw fantasy points, they're the worst secondary in the league against quarterbacks. I really, really like pairing Simeon with Emmanuel Sanders. It's something that I wanted to do last week, and then Simeon ended up getting hurt, so it killed those shares a little bit. But I think people will be trying to figure out if they want Matt Ryan at all because this offense has been so hot. But really, it's the other side of the passing game that's going to be might end up winning some people some GPPs if Simeon's healthy.
Yeah, I think the only person in this game I'm interested in is Sanders. I don't know. He's just dominating the red zone market share. I think he's like leads the league in red zone targets and targets inside the 10. So like, with Demaryius, I know he had a touchdown last week. You're kind of hoping that I think until I see him kind of establish himself as the red zone guy, I'm probably just going to favor Emmanuel most weeks. I think it's a little bit safer. But yeah, I don't know if I'm on the Falcons guys. What do you think about Freeman if he's the only back? Because we've seen teams run up the middle in between, gash them up the middle and have a little bit of success. And they're going to throw the ball to the running back a lot. I mean, we remember last year when Freeman was, this guy who was just unstoppable every single week. Doesn't matter the matchup you play him. And he could be in that same type of usage. I mean, he's played just as, honestly, he's played really well this season. He just hasn't gotten, the 25 touches he got last year. But, at 5K, if Coleman's out with the sickle cell situation, if Freeman's the only guy there at 5,000 on DraftKings, I think that's pretty interesting, even against Denver.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, like you said, with that sickle cell trait. I saw that Dan Quinn said that he may play, Tevin Coleman that is, with Devontae Freeman. The only way I can use Freeman is if Coleman is out and he has a chance to get 25 targets or so, or touches. But other than that, I'm not sure. TJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my problem is that when I'm targeting Freeman, it's because he has really still been dominating the red zone touches. I think after last week, he now is only behind Ryan Matthews and touches inside the 10-yard line. We did see him finally get in the end zone on a short play. I mean, he had a touchdown before that, but it came outside the red zone. Last week, he got a red zone touchdown. I just don't think Atlanta is going to be able to move the ball efficiently enough to get him those red zone touches. So, I mean, if he is the only guy, you do have to think about him. But I'm still just not going to be head over heels when he's only $200 cheaper than Jordan Howard.
Yeah, I agree with that situation. I just think it's one of those things, like you said, with Jordan Howard right there, you don't have to use two guys in the same price range. It just might be one of those things that maybe for GPP purposes, we're hoping that Coleman maybe doesn't play, so a lot of people start to use Freeman based on that volume. So let's move on to this next game here. I don't know what to make of this game either. Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 3-1. I don't know how this has happened. It's one of these odd things that we see in the NFL each year. Buffalo, they're playing well since they fired the offensive coordinator, which wasn't really the problem, which that was odd as well. Tyrod Taylor does have a couple good games in a row, so maybe Adam would like to touch on that. But for this game, I just don't know which direction I'm looking at. So, Adam, why don't we start with you? So maybe just McCoy as a volume guy?
I really only want to target the running backs in this game in tournaments. I think a lot of people are going to be off Todd Gurley. Buffalo is not a great matchup. It's not a terrible matchup for running backs. They do get Marcel Darius back this week, which could make things difficult for him. But I think he's really interesting in tournaments because, he's been so underwhelming for pretty much all the season. And with McCoy, never priced like a top-tier guy, but is getting insane usage. You look at his receptions alone, he's at 6'3", 4-4 receptions through 4 weeks, averaging around 20 touches per game. The Bills run the ball when they get in close. So, yeah, really for me, it's only the running backs. There's really nobody for me in this game that is in a great spot.
TJ, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, the thing I'm really interested in, maybe you guys have an update on this, but if Benny Cunningham continues to be out, then Todd Gurley's going to have more PPR value. I think he had 5 catches last week, and we can see that really make him a really good play against Buffalo. We saw Matt Forte dominate against Buffalo in week 2, albeit a lot of it was on the ground. But if Gurley does add that little bit of versatility, I think this is a really good spot for him. We saw David Johnson 19 for 83, obviously Matt Forte 30 for 100. The Garrett Blount didn't have a good game last week, obviously, but Buffalo is a little vulnerable against running backs, and Gurley has been really bad. So Pfeifer stole my thunder there a little bit because I thought I was going to surprise people with that take.
No, I think he's an awesome tournament play, and I think in tournaments I'm gonna have a lot of Gurley and Blount because I think Blount is like a sick tournament play, right? Because we love Blount, and I know I'm going off track here, but we love Blount in games where New England's favored by a lot and at home. And I know everybody's gonna be on Brady and Edelman with Brady back, but there's a scenario where Blount gets 2 touchdowns in this game easily. So, but yeah, Gurley is a guy I really like in tournaments. And 6,500. People are probably gonna look to spend a little bit higher for maybe a CJ Anderson or Zeke or something like that.
Yeah, that price really makes it interesting with Gurley there. We're talking about $300 less than Zeke Elliott, talking about $100 less than LaShawn McCoy. So it's interesting you guys mentioned that because I would not have considered it. Now, obviously, I have to go back and relook and maybe give a chance to Gurley in tournaments. So let's move on to this next game. At the beginning of every week, everyone always looks for the highest Vegas total, and you're going to find out which players you like in that game. San Diego at the Oakland Raiders. We know what Vegas looks like. So I'm just going to go right to TJ because I know you may like some guys from this game. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Tom Brady, I think David Carr would be like my shoe-in cash game quarterback this week. Did I say David?
Yeah. I do it all the time, though.
Carr would be my shoe-in cash game quarterback. I mean, San Diego is just awful against running backs, awful against quarterbacks, awful against wide receivers. That team is just ripe for the pickings every single week. I do think I like going back to Amari Cooper because we did see Crabtree have his big game last week against Shreesh Wright, and I do think that people are going to shy away from the matchup with Jason Verrett, but I really like those guys that are probably still going to dominate the target share and add a depressed ownership percentage. So I think Raiders are a lot of scoring opportunities specifically through the air, and I think Cooper will be a really low-owned option in this game. Raiders haven't been good in their own right against the pass, but last week, I mean, it's kind of hard at this point to figure out where Rivers is going to want to go with the ball. We know Gordon's going to get his work near the goal line. I thought Tyrell Williams was going to be a guy that could spot last week. It didn't happen because he was leading the team in red zone targets going into the week. But it looks like the rookie tight end Henry is going to be the guy that you do want if you're looking for those tight end or red zone targets from the San Diego passing game.
Before Adam goes on this game, I just wanted to touch on one thing real quick, TJ. Remember how you said David Carr? Don't feel bad. Adam said Marcus Trufant last week. So, we went a little bit back in time in the early 2000s as a unit. So, let's go on. Adam, what do you think about this game? You like David Carr as well, or do you like maybe Bo Jackson, something like that?
No, I never liked David Carr. But I like JP Lossman if he's on this slate. No, but Amari Cooper is a really interesting tournament play, like TJ said, because everybody's going to be on Crabtree after this 3-touchdown game. People are going to see the Chargers and Jason Verrett. The only concern I have is, and maybe it's just because of him being a rookie and dealing with the foot injury he did in his rookie year. Cooper struggled against number 1 corners last year pretty heavily. So I think I'm going to roll him out in tournaments because I do like Derek Carr a lot, and I don't think Crabtree's scoring 3 touchdowns again. That said, I do like Crabtree a lot again in cash. He's giving you a really safe floor. 70 yards or a touchdown in 9 of his last 10 games dating back to last season. So, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. They might be able to run the ball in this game, but, I don't want to play Latavius Murray. I mean, the dude's season high in carries is 14 this year, and he's only gone over 60% of the snaps once. That's just a mess in that backfield right now. It's really annoying. So, I know Latavius Murray's super cheap. He's 4,200 on DraftKings, and such a good spot. But then you look at his touches, and it's like, can you even go there? So, but yeah, I think Derek Carr is right there for me. I have to look at my rankings right now, but I think I have him 6th, right behind Ben Roethlisberger. So, yeah, I'm into Derek Carr for sure. I'm into Hunter Henry if Gates is out, which will probably be out again, honestly. Real quick, because he's kind of a hot topic right now. What do we think about Melvin Gordon? Like, he's been kind of bad the last 2 weeks, but he's been saved by a lot of touchdowns. But he is like a lock for the short yardage work. I mean, he is seeing an insane amount of red zone usage. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And we expect the Chargers to move the ball in this game. So, what do we think about Melvin?
Yeah, I mean the 16 for 35 and 19 for 36 in back-to-back games is obviously really concerning.
And that's against the Colts and Saints, like.
Yeah, but I mean in the previous 2 games he was over 4 yards per carry in each of those games. So I think it's one of those things that's going to even out. You still just take the floor, you take the red zone work. He saw 7 targets in back-to-back weeks. That's going to even out some of that rushing variance. Like he's not going to rush for 2 yards per carry every single week. So he's fine. I mean when the way he's being priced now, you have to be a little bit price sensitive because he is finally seeing that price bump. So you do have to consider that. But just straight up, I think he's pretty much going to be a fine play when you do want him. And at $7,000 in a really high scoring game, I don't think there's any problem with Gordon. Like yards per carry is it's not a stat that I'm going to look at and say, oh yeah, this guy's bad, I'm never playing him. Like I
normally don't either.
I'm just going to look at those 25 touches and the red zone work, and I'll just take that all day. And if I crap out because I bet on a guy with 25 touches, then so be it.
Yeah, and he's running in a lot of passing routes too, which is good to see because some people thought McCluster was going to take into that work when he came in. So, yeah, we'll see what happens if he keeps having these big touchdown games or big games because his price is going to keep going up.
We got 3 games left here. Let's push through them. We have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. That's the next game on the slate. The first thing I look at here is Zeke Elliott leading the league in rushing, and he's really starting to turn it on. We know he didn't see those touchdowns, as TJ mentioned earlier in the show, but most of that has become because he really was the reason they got down there. So we needed a breather. Just happened to be on the 1 or 2 yard line where Lance Dunbar and Alfred Morris came in. But for me, this game, I do like Zeke Elliott just based on the volume he's getting. As for the rest of the game, I looked at AJ Green, but Morris Claiborne's actually playing very well so far this season. So maybe that might be a play where I'd just rather pay up a little bit more for that elite echelon of receivers. But let's start with you, Adam, on this game. Cincinnati at Dallas. Is there anything you're really looking at, or is it just kind of a game where you pick 1 or 2 players?
AJ Green, I'm on again. I can't ignore one of the best receivers in the NFL seeing an insane market share. 3 double-digit target gains in the only game he didn't have double-digit targets. He still had 8. Leads the league in receptions. Tyler Boyd's not even playing a lot of snaps, so it's essentially on 2 wide sets. It's Green and Brandon LaFell, and Andy Dalton, he's going to look for AJ Green first and foremost. Not afraid of the Dallas secondary. Other than that, though, I mean, based off usage at 6,800, Zeke is fine. Not a great matchup, but I don't mind Zeke. And other than that, we don't know if Dez is going to play. I don't really like Dak in the spot. I don't mind Dalton, but he wasn't like. If Pfeifer was healthy and active for the Bengals, I would like Dalton a lot more. But we've seen it, like especially in the red zone, they're missing that red zone guy. So I think I'm really only on AJ Green in this spot.
TJ, what about you? What are you looking at in this game? Is there anything in particular standing out, or is it just kind of one of those that you're just scrolling right through?
I don't really love anything in this game. Spread of just 1 point over under of 45, so kind of pretty low over under. No guys that I think outside of AJ Green that are really going to dominate, but I don't think he's in a must-play spot. Like he's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anybody that stands out in this game that I feel like I have to get into my lineups. Like Zeke's fine, but Dallas is a small underdog, so 1 point isn't much. It's basically a pick 'em, but there could be some game script concerns if Dallas does fall behind against Cincinnati and they decide just to Jeremy Hill it. So, yeah, no one that I really love in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is one of those games where maybe you find it in a smaller slate if you're playing the 4 p.m. only, but I'm just not looking at anybody in this game. Let's move on to the next one here. The New York Giants at the Green Bay Packers. The Giants are on a short week. They're traveling to Green Bay, which we know is an offense that just light it up at home. Giants defense has been a little bit better, but we saw what happened last night where their second receiver or second corner coming in for injury did not look good at all. Stephon Diggs had a nice little game. We know he scored a touch. Kyle Rudolph scored a touchdown again for the 19th straight game, it seems like, with Sam Bradford. But this game, New York Giants at Green Bay, for me, I'm just looking at Green Bay, but I'm going to let TJ dig a little bit deeper into it because I know that he probably likes this offense a little bit more than most people.
Yeah, I mean, there's one guy that really stands out to me this week as kind of a sneaky play in Green Bay, and that's Randall Cobb. We only saw him get 3 targets in week 3, but the way to attack the Giants is in the interior. We saw Kyle Rudolph have a really good game last week. We saw in the opening week, we saw Beasley have a huge game and Witten have a really good game against Giants. With Jared Cook, I think Jared Cook's still going to be out. Randall Cobb could finally have that game with Aaron Rodgers that we saw him have 2 years ago. So I think if people are targeting this offense, they'll be going back to Jordy because he has been dominating the target share and the red zone looks. But I really like Cobb, especially because his price is pretty low. I think he's only $6,200 on DraftKings. So that's a guy that I think people are going to be off of. But I really like him in this spot against the Giants just because that's always how I like attacking the Giants. Yeah,
TJ, you stole my thunder back. So are you. I think Cobb's really, really awesome in tournaments. Like, he's too talented and too good of an offense not to have one of those blow-up games. And TJ alluded to, like, this is the ideal spot for it to happen against a Giants defense that struggles in the middle of the field in the slot. They have weak linebackers. They have a good defensive line and good corners when they're healthy. But other than that, they're struggling on defense. So Cobb at 6,200 is really sneaky. I don't think people are going to be on him. I love Rodgers at home. I think Rodgers in a fine spot. I don't think many people are going to stack Rodgers and Cobb. Everybody's going to stack. If they stack Rodgers, they're going to do it with Jordy, who I think's in a fine spot. Like, I don't think Jordy is ever in a spot where you have to not play him. And in that same spot, he's 600 cheaper than Beckham, who's really struggling right now. So, yeah, I like Cobb a lot. I normally like Lacy in tournaments because nobody's ever really on him as much. And he's only 5,900, but the Giants have been so good against the run. I know they were a little weak last night against McKinnon, but I don't mind Lacy in tournaments because, like, if you're sitting here and if you're expecting Green Bay to have a big game, like, Lacy's played well this season, he just hasn't scored. So I don't mind Lacy at that price. I think we're going to be looking back like 6 or 7 weeks from now, and 5,900 for Eddie Lacy, if he's still healthy, is going to be like insanely cheap. So don't mind him. On the Giants, I don't really like anybody. Maybe Sterling Shepard. I know it's tough because Beckham, number one wide receivers have had success against Green Bay this season, but Beckham just seems lost right now. I don't know. What do you guys think about the Giants, guys?
I mean, I think this is like the classic spot to finally go to Beckham because everyone's going to be so down on him, and it's not like he hasn't even really had a drop off in production from last year. He hasn't scored yet, but his targets and receptions are pretty much right where they were last year, and his target share is actually up from last year. And through the first 3 weeks of the season, I don't know what the red zone targets were last night, but he was the only wide receiver in the league with 3 targets inside the 10. I think Fitzgerald might have had the same, but the opportunity's there. He's faced a couple really tough spots. I mean, he did fine against Norman, but nothing special. And then the Vikings are obviously fantastic. So I actually really like going to Odell in this spot.
Yeah, I think you talked me into it a little bit because, I think people are overreacting to star players when they face the Vikings. Like, we just got to remember, this is a very good defense, probably the second best defense in the NFL behind Denver. Like, it happened with Rodgers. He came at home and was unstoppable. So I think Beckham in tournaments is really interesting. I think you talked me into him a lot. I think I'm going to be really, really invested in Odell Beckham because the big game's coming. And like you said, the targets are still there, like 11, 8, and 9 targets. He's just hasn't scored. So, yeah, I like Odell now I think about it.
Yeah, you guys both just kind of sold me a little bit on using him in tournaments. Like you said, that ownership will definitely be low. He's in a great spot. And with Green Bay being at home, that game flow is more than likely to favor the passing game for the New York Giants. So I'm on board with you guys there. The only other thing I wanted to touch on with the Giants, it looks like they finally realized who the most talented back is in that backfield right now, which I think is Paul Perkins. Problem is, he only played a few snaps. It was because he was coming in just because simply the other guys were tired. So hopefully maybe he gets more snaps. Rashad Jennings could come back. But if Perkins by any chance is going to see an increase in workload, I think he makes for an interesting sleeper going forward. So keep an eye on that situation. This last game, Monday Night Football, Cam Newton, or maybe not. Maybe Cam Newton won't play. He's in the concussion protocol. So this is going to be an interesting week to look at that. They're hosting Tampa Bay in an NFC South division matchup here. So for those of you playing the full slates, this will be a game that people will like to target. So TJ, we'll start with you. Is anybody piquing your interest in this game?
Yeah, I really like going to Kelvin Benjamin here. He didn't do much last week. Did he score a touchdown in that garbage time? Yeah, he scored the garbage time touchdown, but his volume numbers weren't very high. But Derek Anderson he's probably one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. I don't think the receivers are going to have much of a drop-off with him with him under center. He's probably more accurate than Cam, but that's not that hard to do in the first place. And I think that you just want to be targeting Tampa Bay's secondary. They allow the most fantasy points per reception to wide receivers. And then we saw, even with Paxton Lynch in there last week, Manny Sanders and DT still did their thing. So I really like going to Carolina wide receivers because people will just see no Cam and probably just ignore the offense as a whole without really looking at how good of a matchup it is.
Yeah, and I think Derek Anderson, when he made, 2 starts for Cam, 2 years ago? I think they were both against Tampa Bay too, so
yeah,
interesting. Their secondary has been really bad, and their pass rush and their run defense might be taking a hit. They lost a bunch of linemen against Denver last week. I think Gerald McCoy got hurt. Noah Spence got hurt, I think. So they're kind of hurting right now. On the other side, I mean, how do you think people are going to look at Mike Evans after what Julio just did? Do you think that bumps his ownership? I know it's a Monday night game, so it's going to be a little different. But the dude's averaging 12.5 targets per game. He's on pace for 200 targets. Julio had 204 last year, so he's seeing an insane amount of targets right now. What do you think about Evans?
Yeah, I mean, he leads the league in targets. I'm all over that. I think he has 2 more targets than Antonio Brown right now. We mentioned at the top of the show in the recap, Carolina's secondary is not very good. So, yeah, I'm spot right here. I think also to a lesser extent Cameron Brate, just because he's seen such a huge workload at tight end ever since Austin Seferian-Jenkins got the boot. So both of those guys I think could be really, really good spots.
Yeah, and they're, for what it's worth, Brandon Myers, their other tight end, got hurt. So, like, it's going to be Brate. And Tampa Bay's starting to throw the ball a lot more. So, yeah, Mike Evans could go nuts too. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on Evans. He's one of my favorite players in the league, with a little bias there dating back to college.
You got 2 of your favorites in this game.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that wide receiver class is just KB and Evans. You guys have known me loving those guys for a while, so I can't wait to watch this game. I'm sad that it's not in the main slate, but I'm definitely going to be playing some slates that include that Monday night game because I want a piece of both Evans and Kelvin Benjamin, as I think both of them do score. That wraps up all of our games this week. We did have 4 bye weeks, or 4 teams with bye weeks, but we covered a ton of stuff. Thank you again, TJ, for coming on board. It was excellent to have expertise with you and Adam. I learned a lot. Of course, this week, with the week ahead, it is only Tuesday, so we have a ton of content coming at rotocurve.com. You can find ownership information on Thursday nights, of course. There's all of our tools, all of our rankings, cheat sheets for each position. We have an optimizer up with brand new features we worked on this morning. A ton of red zone stats. These are things you have to look at. All the information you heard us talk about is up on rotocurve.com. Player stats for red zone, carries, targets, touches. We have consensus regs, which I just put in this morning. We know Adams are coming in the next few days. We even have a DFS pro and Brian Healy on board. So be sure to give him a shout. He comes up with his cheat sheet that has helped him win 3 live final seats in a row. So give him a chance to see that. Of course, we know Adam does his cash and tournament picks, one of my favorite reads each week, and his bargain pick as well. All this content, under $1 a day, great bargain. Now, since we love our listeners here at First and Goal, you can use a promo code CURVE Sign up for a membership, $2 off for a weekly membership. All this stuff we just talked about, just be $5 for you for this week. So be sure to use that promo code, take advantage of it, and get all the information you need for week 5 in the NFL. This has been First and Goal for week 5, presented by Rosters.com. For Adam Pfeifer and TJ Hernandez, it's been a lot of fun, guys. I'm Josh Collacchi. Good luck this week.